minutes to 8, and we're joined in studio days by our guest this morning as we do a pre-International Youth Day celebration. That's going to be tomorrow, the 12th of August. Now I'm joined by Ms. Toini. She is the founder and director of the National Youth Climate Action Network of Namibia, focusing on promoting youth-led climate action across Namibia towards sustainable development. She is Namibia's Young Action for Sustainable Development Champion 2021 actually to current, and in 2021 she was also recognized as the top 100 young African leaders in conservation, that is by the African Wildlife Foundation. And her background is studying national resource management with the University of Science and Technology. She is a youth and social justice activist and works that is in the climate finance sector of Namibia. She's very passionate about the environment, socially as well as biodiversity, and just taking care of the environment. I remember in high school, she started off the environmental club at high school. So how are you doing this morning? It's been a while.
Yes, it has indeed. I'm doing fantastic this morning. I'm so happy to be here.
Awesome stuff. I'm reading your bio, I'm like, yours goes on and on and on, and it's nice to see young people taking up space when it comes to the climate change sector in our country and in the world. So, because we are the future, and technically it's our problem to solve at the end of the day. So, it's nice to see young people taking up space in this sector of climate change.
Thank you, thank you.
Now, this year's theme that is for International Youth Day is around climate change. The theme is Green Skills for Youth Towards a Sustainable World. So why did you decide to start the National Youth Climate Action Network in Namibia?
Well, thank you again for the invitation, Joey. It's quite a privilege to be here today with you, especially, from the JNL Senior Secondary School to here, I'm as well proud of you. And of course, like you said, establishing an environmental club back then, being part of the movement for long, you come to realize that there are platforms or gaps that needs to be filled. And of course, when we came up with the National Youth Climate Action Network of Namibia, was to fill a gap that was there in terms of youth advocacy for sustainable development and youth action for climate change. So the National Youth Climate Action Network of Namibia was established to fill that gap.
That's lovely. Now, recently you hosted maybe a second local conference of youth, as well as focuses on National Climate Change Summit that was from the 11th to the 13th of July, along with the National Youth Council of Namibia. Now, what were some of the deliberations, some of the discussions that were made, especially towards the development of Namibia's National Youth Statement on Climate Change?
Yeah, first, before I just, go into the deliberations, it's just to say that was one of the successful events we have had. And of course, also with the reviews that we have received, is that it's one of the platforms that have been lacking for quite some time. So of course, our aim was to bring the Namibian youth together and then us to discuss about issues that are affecting us when it comes to climate change and all these socio-economic issues that are surrounding us. Of course, we know climate change is a cross-cutting impact to our economies, our societies, justice systems, and the like. So if you start to go deeper, you will understand that there is no sector that we labor in or even deliberate on that is not impacted by climate change. So it was for us to come together as Namibian youth to discuss about issues affecting us in the sectors of energy, in the sector of water security, the sectors of food security, sustainable land management, resilient infrastructure, disaster risk management, and many other cross-cutting issues. So for us coming together, we have then decided, we needed to raise demands, because it's through demands that we can influence the political will in order for us and our voices to be heard, and entirely for the nation to know what is it that the youth are thinking towards, what kind of solutions do they have when it comes to action related to climate change. And that's exactly what we did with the National Youth Statement, which will be online soon, and I hope to share it with you as well. Then maybe you can also share it with your audiences.
Awesome stuff. And what are some of the projects that the National Youth Climate Action Network has done so far since it was formed?
Yeah, the name is quite a lengthy.
Yeah, it's a mouthful.
So that's why sometimes I would, like just keep it at Youth for Can. That's the shortened part of it. And of course, we have been mostly in the areas of awareness creation. So we do that through our social media platforms, and we also do that with our members from across the 14 regions of Namibia, where we convene in meetings and just discuss about issues and solutions, and also formulate some specific projects that we can come up with as youth. Other than that, we also do run some internal projects. Like our previous project that we really had was at the conservancies, where we educated conservancies about the importance of keeping the air clean, It was hosted under the International Day of Clean Air for Blue Sky. And we also donated bicycles because we have come to realize that we need to move into a sustainable agenda. And of course, bicycles are some of the proven green mobility equipments that we have out there. So it was our duty to drive with that agenda, and of course, addressing some of the gaps that were in that conservancy. So other than that, we also ensure that youth inclusivity is well observed in policies, and that is now in the angle of ensuring that in the decision-making table, the youth are well represented. So yeah, just a few.
Another bit that you mentioned that youth are being part of the policymakers, because that's very important, because that's where most of these things happen, is at policy level. So once young people are part of this, they actually get to drive change from the policy level as well. So that's very interesting. Now, why is this year's theme for International Youth Day so important and crucial? Because we know during this month we've had a lot of heat waves, extremely high temperatures were experienced. That is for the month of July, the highest we've ever experienced in the world, especially in the Western countries where they are currently having a summer. So why is this theme so crucial at this very moment in time?
Yeah. That's, for me, I'm super excited to know that, the international agenda is also very inclusive of youth this year. And of course, looking at how we can combat climate change as the nation, as international youth, and how we can also just, contribute towards innovations and the transitional agenda for sustainable development. In these aspects, when we talk about green skills, we're actually referring to skills that are needed to reduce global warming, environmental impacts, and skills that would support us for economic restructuring with the purpose of attaining at least a cleaner and more of a resilient climate with efficient economies. So for me, that's why the green skill is very important, because it talks about innovations that supports the preservation of our economies as well and our ecosystems, and then for us to provide decent jobs, jobs that would not affect or impact our health, those that would not impact our economies or even our environments, and entirely not those that are injustice to the human system. So of course, it's jobs in all angles, whether you're talking about construction, waste management, manufacturing, renewable energy kind of jobs. Even in the public admin, there are sustainable jobs that requires green skills and innovation in order for us to achieve that transitional agenda towards sustainable and economic efficiency.
Yeah, then we'll continue the discussion right after the sounds of Harry Styles with As It Was on the Morning Plug, and then we continue talking about this year's the National Youth Day theme right now.
So great.
So we'll go on after the song and finish the last few questions.
Thank you, Joey.
It doesn't seem like you're reading, it's like you know the stuff already.
That's the thing. It's like, it's all passion and purpose. I remember I posted that yesterday on my status. I was going, let me say the day before, I was listening to the National FM, and there was this lady called Seija Amambo. She's a transformational and innovation coach, and she was just talking about purpose and a paradigm shift. that when you are practicing within your purpose, you don't even try hard. It's like everything just flows. And I get that a lot, because for me, it's really my passion and my profession at the same time. So,
Some people that will like just do it for the sake of doing it, or for wanting to be having a limelight, and then they don't know what they're talking about. And you can sense that somebody doesn't know what they're talking about, even when they answer the questions.
Yeah, no, it's true. Yeah, no, of course. I mean, yeah.
But it's see people that are passionate about climate change actually in the sector, because you have a lot of people that are not passionate about it, but just because it's like one of the most talked about, a lot of funding goes there, that's why they are there most.
Exactly. We kind of like having that now, and it's fortunate enough that there's so much that we can do. There's everybody can play a much, stake of a role, even through radio. There's always something, even through those projects that come in, you can choose to just navigate around and find which one to run with. It's quite an interesting sector, because it impacts every other sector.
Yeah, globally, like everywhere, there's no way you can hide from climate change.
Exactly, there's just no way.
Going on. The sound that is on Harry Cells coming through saying, as it was on this morning, we are having a free International Youth Day celebration. This year's theme is Green Skills for Youth Towards a Sustainable World, and we're joined by Toini, who is the National Director and founder of the National Youth Climate Action Network of Namibia, and we're continuing our discussion around the theme for this year. Now, what role can we as young people play that is in climate change, especially in Africa, because we are one of the most affected continents by climate change?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Joey. The role of youth have always been undermined, especially in sectors that are pushing towards lobbying and advocacy, because most often you just find the youth in the streets advocating for their needs and voicing out their challenges. And most of the time, we are sitting with those solutions, but we don't know and we don't have the platform to engage or bring our solutions to the forefront. So when it comes to the roles that the youth can play in the fight of climate change, youth can play a role of influencing. And this is in terms of like influencing your communities, your peers, to join into the fight of climate change and to change their attitudes and behavior towards the environment. We all have a stake to play. We all have a responsibility. It starts with you not throwing down that paper and putting it in the bin. That is a change of attitude, a change of knowledge as well, acquiring it more. To see how best you can contribute to the agenda. That could be choosing focusing on a study program that talks about innovation, green skills, like today, as we commemorate or look towards commemorating the International Youth Day, looking at that theme as an important skill that would require us to move towards this transitional agenda. What we can also do is advocacy. Of course, capacity building and education and awareness is very much important. We all can take part in that. You can share green skill and environmental friendly and climate change friendly messages across, as well as take part in initiatives that advocate towards environmental protection as well as impact mitigation. And of course, through demands, like we did with the platform that we had with the National Climate Change Summit, where we came together as, a national one voice, and we were raising our demands in terms of how can we address climate change, what are our needs, and what should the government focus, in order for us to change that political will and influence decision making. That in all is what we can do to influence and play our role in the fight.
You've mentioned so many interesting things that we can actually do as young people, that we don't always need to be in a position where we can just advocate as well as just put out information towards educating ourselves and other young people towards taking care of our environment. And it starts by not littering when you are in the cab throwing out, you're going home. So take it, like I always find it very, very annoying when somebody does it. I'm like, but you are going home, wherever you're going, there's going to be a dustbin. So why not just keep it in your bag and then throw it away when you get there eventually? So what are your thoughts on the statement, climate change is our generation's fight?
Yeah, the world keeps getting warmer, and I think we also need, started picking it up. Just a few, I think, a day ago, when it started being cloudy here, everyone was like, it's supposed to be the end of winter, and now it looks like it's the start of a rainfall. Where are we headed? So these are some of the changes that we are seeing, yeah? And of course, these are the results of the impacts in weather and climate over a long period of time, influenced by our own industrial revolution, influenced by our own attitudes towards the environment. And of course, despite these impacts, the most affected generation is us. The youth. Of course, we are known as the future, but I like to present ourselves as the present generation because we are already here. Some of us are supposed to actually be running the show and the platforms, but unfortunately, we don't have that capacity nor the platforms to do so. But of course, we suffer severely of the impacts of climate change, and it's our generational fight for us to take it up and raise our voices and come together as one, as well as advocate and also seek the skills that are required for us to play our roles in those aspects and concept. Like, for example, now we are talking about green hydrogen. How many of us are making sure that by the time that those plants are set up, we too can play our role? How many of us are seeking towards ensuring that we run the climate smart agriculture sector in the future, because things are changing? How many of us are actually thinking about innovations that are green, that are innovative, that are sufficient and effective to communities that are in vulnerable areas, and how many of us are actually just influencing through education and awareness? So it's our generational fight in terms of ensuring that we prepare ourselves and we play our role in ensuring that we take responsibility, we change attitudes, and we align ourselves towards the sustainable development agenda that is being advocated for.
I love the fact that you said it's also our responsibility to educate ourselves in terms of what's happening, what's going to happen in the future, especially with renewable energy, initial energy being at the key front of Namibia moving forward. Now, with that said, do you feel the government is doing enough to make sure that they educate people about climate change and the effects it has, especially in remote areas, rural areas, where people don't have access to TV stations, to newspapers in most cases? Are those people also aware of why there is a low rainfall when it's supposed to be rainy season? Why are crops not being dosed up? Are those people educated and need the education the most?
Yeah, so there's different kind of education. There's education that just is rolled out to be awareness creation. There is education that is infused in projects and programs. And then there's just general education that is shared on our platforms like the radios and television and the likes, even in newspapers. I entirely would like to say I think I'm in between. They are doing something, but they're not doing enough. Fairly speaking, I think there is still a need for awareness creation in order for us to change attitudes. I think back then when we had like a lot of ongoing education on climate change and environmental impacts, we were seeing quite of a change in attitudes. But I see now it has changed from education more to regulating laws in order for us to adapt to these changes. Like, for example, the law of banning plastic bags or putting a levy on it. Of course, those are regulatories that the government has set in place for the public to change their attitudes and be part of this transformational agenda. And of course, some of the things could be like the projects that are rolled out in communities. For example, through the Environmental Investment Fund of Namibia, what they do is through those projects, they also have a token of ensuring that the communities are empowered and educated on climate change. And of course, us, whenever you are out there to run environmental impact issues or challenges or speak to communities, you first start with creating awareness. So of course, the government through the agencies, through their programs are doing something, but I feel like we really need to go deeper in making sure that people are well educated in a way of where we are trying to go with this new agenda of sustainable development.
Definitely lovely. Now, as we celebrate International Youth Day under the theme Green Skills for You towards a sustainable world, what's your call for action for young people regarding this theme for this year?
Well, yeah, like I said, we as the youth need to take on awareness for us to be part of the just transitional agenda. And then also take up the green skills, innovation and programs that are being presented now. And of course, we need to play our key generational role in ensuring that we are skillful towards the future that we are headed. And we too can play a much bigger role and not just, repeat, but reverse the impacts that have already been caused on the environment. And that is by ensuring that we are educated and we are knowledgeable and also have the abilities and the skills to drive that agenda. So I think that is my call, is to ensure that we all present ourselves effective in ensuring that we run this agenda that is now ahead of us. And it's going to be our responsibility to green back the Mother Earth that has, that is currently giving us this warm and unpredictable weathers and uncertainties in our climate.
Well, thank you so much for joining us this morning and for just telling us what we need to do as young people to take up space and to take care of Mother Nature, because definitely these clouds, we are expecting wind and dance, but it seems like we are getting the opposite of what we're supposed to get during this season. So thank you so much for joining us this morning once more again.
Thank you, Joey. Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. The sound that is of techno coming through on 89 FM.